Now, with the volatility in naira against the US dollar, experts are seeking creative ways to hedge their investment in real estate to mitigate the level of losses. Stephen Akintayo, chairman of Gtext Holdings, joins me to explore options available to investors in the real estate sector. Stephen, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
As with other sectors, the real estate sector obviously too hasn't been immune, especially to the FX crisis. Of course, we have rising interest rates, lingering inflation, etc. But talk to us about how this has impacted. Let's start from there. How this has impacted the market, the sector so far this year, because analysts tell us that the housing market has seen a spike of about 40% in the cost of leases and sales. Talk to us about the extent of this of the impact.
Well, as you know, there are a lot of what is used to build houses in Africa is imported. Even a lot of what is also used to even manufacture cement also affected by FX. So naturally, you're seeing the fact that houses are going way up. Houses that and I think this affects more of developers because sometimes you've planned that maybe, for example, you're going to spend $100,000 to complete this particular house. Now you need to spend maybe $150,000 to do that because cost of, from door to windows to toilet fittings, a lot of these are imported. And so that affects the cost. And of course, that's then transferred to the consumer who is either buying the house or the person who is leasing the house or renting it. So that definitely affects the market.
But I know that this, what I'm about to say, I mean, this obviously will probably happen over the long term. But are we already within the space, already having conversations about how some of these inputs can be manufactured locally? I know that, I mean, the bulk of them are actually not manufactured in the country. But are those kind of conversations already taking place in terms of, some kind of backward integration?
Yes, that's the right thing to do. I mean, a lot of developers who understand how the industry works, you have to think of backward integration. However, the challenge to that is liquidity. The industry is suffering, big time when it comes to liquidity because the trust level is really, is low. So a lot of people are reluctant to do what we call off-plan sales, where you pay and then gradually as the developer builds, you have your house. So now you have to go, source for funds, and you don't have too many options there because, of course, the commercial banks are not flexible. The rates are ridiculous. So that affects the concept of backward integration. But for us, for example, we're into green and smart homes. So we're creating a lot of competition for young people who can come up with creative ideas to manufacture, and then how do we support that? But that's more of a long-term, strategy, and that can take another 5 to 10 years for a lot of developers to evolve into this. But at least that's our timeline.
Okay, a quick follow-up to that. I mean, interesting that you just talked about those type of homes. As you know, there is pressure on the consumer pocket right now, and for especially first-time home buyers and even those who are renting, disposable income is reducing. How are developers responding to this? Are they going to be, the composition of the home, is that going to change in response to, lower cash or, disposable income for those who, want to purchase homes?
And that's a very good question. So it's another major issue that we're facing in terms of affordability. But one of the concepts that I think a lot of developers are looking at least we are looking at, is accessibility. How do you make properties accessible to people? Affordability, we don't have control, right? The government has control in that area. Because, for example, if you're buying property, let's say in the US, the cost isn't necessarily cheap. But with 10% deposit, you can spread the remaining 90% in 30 years. So they're making it more accessible, not necessarily affordable. And I think that's the route some of us are considering so that we can deliver on what we're promising people. Another thing we came up with recently, particularly with our cooperative, we have a cooperative where we can come up with a fractional real estate investment, where rather than one person owning a house, 20 people can come together to own one house, and the rental income can be distributed amongst those people, because you have also a lot, particularly Nigerians in diaspora, who want to invest back at home, Africans in diaspora, but don't necessarily want to live in those houses. But particularly because of the challenges you're seeing in the Western world, with inflation in those places as well, tax in those places as well. So people know a lot of Africans in diaspora want to invest back at home, and they're not necessarily wanting to live there, but they want good returns. So with the concept of fractional real estate is also something we're looking at to make housing accessible.
Right, we have about just 1 minute left. What is your outlook for the rest of the sector? The CBN has said no interventions are coming to prop up the naira, etc. But what is your outlook?
Well, I think if again is follow through that is required, and you have to just be consistent with the right policies. We hope that they can follow through, and then saboteurs can be dealt with, because as the CBN has said, that some of this parallel market is not reflective of the market forces, So we hope that the government can be consistent and follow through the policies that they've come up with. But I think in the long run, it's going to be good.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for talking to us today. Appreciate your time on the show. Stephen Akintayo, Chairman of Gtext Holdings.